So let us discuss about 26th May 2015 newspaper. What it states is the first one related to the High Court judgment with regard to the powers of ACB Anti-Corruption Bureau of Delhi government to take actions against the Delhi police. The first thing is, as per the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act, the police, public order and land, they are out of the scope of the Delhi government, and they are the discretionary powers of the Lieutenant Governor. In this case, the Union Home Ministry has given a notification that the Delhi ACB has no authority to conduct an investigation or file a case on the central government employees or officers. Now, the Delhi High Court judgment goes against to this, and it said that the center's notification is suspectful. So it says it is suspectful. So what is the argument of the High Court of the New Delhi, High Court of Delhi? What it says is the elected government headed by the Chief Minister and Council of Ministers has authority to enforce the laws or the subjects to which the legislative power of the states exist. It means that wherever the legislative power is confined to the state legislatures, to enforce these matters, the state executive has the authority. And the argument is, the police and public order, they fall as the state subjects. So, Delhi is not fully a state. Now for this, the counter argument is, the criminal procedure and the criminal law, it comes under the concurrent list. If you take these matters as the concurrent list, then the state governments also gets the Delhi government also gets the equal powers to make a law and also enforce these laws. The High Court upheld the argument of the Delhi government and it has provided for the impetus to the Kejriwal's government in Delhi. It becomes much important as the conflict between the elected government and governor is getting intensified in Delhi. Next is, Parrikar pushes for Chief of Defence Staff. In the post-Kargil war scenario, Naresh Chandra Committee has recommended for the Chief of Defence Staff. So what it says is, there has to be an office that integrates various actions between the three forces. It also provides or prevents duplication of purchases and duplication of work done by the agencies. So the Manohar Parrikar, the Defence Minister, also pushes for this Chief of Defence Staff, and it has been proposed for Cabinet Committee on Security. Now, let us see the decision of the Cabinet Committee on Security. Now, the next thing is Ashok Mehta, the articles related to the defence. So, the previous government, during the tenure of A.K. Antony as Defence Minister, the sole purpose of the Defence Ministry is to avoid the scams. The solution to avoid the scams is no activity, if possible, little activity. It means no work, no scams. That's what is the policy followed by the A.K. Antony. So, his over-protectionism has decreased our strategic interests or delayed our defence procurements. Now, Manohar Parrikar, once he took as the Defence Minister, the situation appears to be improving as his swift decision making is providing for a new impetus. Now, his statement, that is, the terrorists shall be neutralized through the terrorists, it was highly criticized in civilian circles, but however appraised, appreciated in military circles. What author says is the similar proposal was kept in 2003, way back in 2003, before the Defense Minister George Fernandez, though he was rejected, that it is aimed at improving our strategic assets abroad and providing for operations or covert operations to deter cross-border terrorism. These are the things which are recommended. Mr. V.K. Singh, when he was the army chief, he has created a special operations wing and also technical support division. This special operations wing and technical support division showed some results in action. Now, post-Kargil war scenario, the Naresh Chandra committee recommended for Chief of Defence Staff. As just I discussed, the government is considering that. Now, on the other hand, the modernization especially, there are certain challenges. Relatively very less amount is being spent on bringing in for new items to the military. Around 6,070 crores is being spent on that. And most of the money is spent on already committed liabilities. So what the author recommends is 30-40:30 ratio. The 30% is for the state-of-the-art equipment, new state-of-the-art equipment. The 40% of the defense modernization budget is for current liabilities. 30% to upgrade the existing obsolete equipment. So this 30% has to be followed. And on the other hand is Mountain Strike Corps, the government's decision to reduce the finances for Mountain Strike Corps is one seen as a retrogressive step with increasing threat from China. And second thing is, the bureaucracy is a major roadblock in defense modernization and decision making. So the business rules, conduct of business rules provides for the majority of functions related to the defense in the hands of defense secretary. And so there is a huge conflict between this bureaucracy and the army or the military establishment. So military decision making. So this has to be overcome with the existing scenario. Next is the 365 days, 1 year evaluation of Modi's government. Not up to expectations. It means, why is it not up to expectations? If you see, the first thing is there is no competition or comparison mark to Modi's government as of now, and people are comparing the Modi to his own promises which were made during the elections, and promises versus performance, if compared, the government is relatively failing or crumbling under its own pressure. And the decrease in social sector expenditure is a key drawback for this government, or cutting down of social welfare programs. The third one is the Land Acquisition Act. The amendments to the Land Acquisition Act which the government wanted to bring in, it gave it an anti-port tag. And on the other hand, the Mr. Modi government, though it has criticized the Manmohan Singh government on various fronts, most of the policies and programs are essentially a continuation of the previous governments. And but on the foreign front, the Modi government relatively did well. So on 25th May articles, I have widely discussed this particular thing on what the Modi did. So we discussed about South Asia, West Asia, and with the major powers, and what are the challenges with that, they are already discussed. Please look into that. So what the beautiful conclusion says is, it is a matter of credit to the Prime Minister Modi that the Nehruvian emphasis on strategic autonomy is still retained. So the Nehruvian eras, the Nehru always stressed for the strategic autonomy. The present Prime Minister is also continuing the same. And next is on the welfare front, an in-depth analysis is required. So first one is across the world, the rights-based approach provided for guaranteed services. So the services guarantees have increased. Now the existing government is nowhere involved or interested in rights-based approach. So let's talk about a bit about rights-based approach. A service, education or health or work, a service is considered as a right. So there is a supplier of the service which is government and a demand side of a service delivery that is citizen. Now the rights-based approach try to strengthen this demand side of the service delivery that is citizen and increases the quality of the services. That's what is the rights-based approach. The UPS government's landmark legislations are based on this approach. Either if you talk about MG Narega and National Food Security Act, all these are based on rights-based approach. Now the problem with the rights-based approach is the physical indiscipline or increased expenditure on the government. So what we can see this approach as, the politics winning over the economics in India. So that is politics triumph over blind monetarism. Now if you see, as a capitalistic society is inherently unequal, we shall make a conscious effort towards redistribution of wealth. As we are moving towards a capitalistic way of production, now how we can bring in relative benefits to everyone. One is policy on redistribution of wealth. How is this possible? Through imposition of the new taxes. And the second thing is, to protect the weaker sections, the social welfare programs have to exist. So this is how the Scandinavian countries have worked and led to the development. Now if you take India, the existing government, the Jan Dhan Yojana, next is Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Prime Minister Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Prime Minister Suraksha Bima Yojana, and Atal Pension Yojana. All these are the programs which are recently launched. In this, these are all contributory schemes. It means that the beneficiary has to contribute to avail the benefit out of this scheme. It means that the social security function of a particular individual, it is totally left to his own self. The government is moving itself away from the social security responsibility. So, it is the decreasing allocations for the social sector is clearly visible in the change of this particular stand of the existing government. All these programs, they are linked with the Jan Dhan Yojana. So though huge amount of number of accounts are created, non-operationalization of accounts, lack of funds in these accounts shows that the relative low incomes of the poor people in the country, and these contributory insurance schemes as welfare measures are relatively successful in the developed countries when compared to the developing world. Next, it means that the directive principles of state policy in India all talks about bringing in welfareism. The existing government appears moving away from this. Next is Chidambaram talked about the missed opportunities for the existing government. So what he said is the credit growth. Now if you can see, the credit growth is lowest in many years. If the investments have to come into the economy, we have to dispense with this or low credit growth, sluggish aggregate demand, stalled projects and poor performance in the core sector. Unless these are being addressed, we cannot overcome the present existing scenario in the country. So, an aggregate demand is one of the major challenges, and 585 private sector projects are still stalled in the country. There is a huge agricultural distress in the country. And next is, even the investment flow towards the industrialists is very minimal, credit flow is to the very minimal. And next, the tax disputes, which has been described as tax terrorism, the term framed by the existing finance minister when UPA government was in power, that is Arun Jaitley. So the tax terrorism is still haunting him. It is related to the minimum alternate tax. So these have to be resolved as quick as possible to get the higher growth path to India. So these are the important articles. I see a quality article with regard to this particular, the welfareism, changing stand on the welfareism in India. And next is, so achievements already overly discussed in multiple articles on multiple days. With regard to the defense establishments, I don't see a positive, or else there not be a provision for a question. And next is, this particular judgment of the High Court can have a long way with regard to the performance of the Delhi government. So Article 239 AA subclause 4 and next is GNCT try to have a control over these articles. Thank you very much.